Let's just jump right into it. Today's explainer is going to hit incredibly close to home for anyone who's ever felt completely drained by just trying to be a good, polite person. We're looking at a fascinating piece by Andrew Williams called The High Cost of Polite Silence. We're going to break down exactly why all this forced professional and social politeness is leaving you utterly exhausted and, frankly, feeling a little gaslit by the world around you.
So, let's kick things off with a very real question. Why on earth does being polite feel so exhausting? You know exactly what I mean, right? Have you ever sat through one of those mind-numbingly pointless meetings or maybe a super tense Thanksgiving dinner and you just painstakingly kept the peace? You smiled, you nodded, you made absolutely sure not to ruffle a single feather, and then at the end of it you felt like you had just run a mental marathon. Well, you're not crazy. There is a very specific psychological mechanism at play here. And it basically boils down to this: lying by omission. It's the psychological effect where we actively hide our true feelings or our real lived experiences just to keep things stable. We suppress our biology's absolute demand for reality, all to maintain this artificial, synthetic stability in the room. Basically, we are trading our truth for a temporary surface-level peace.
Which brings us to Section 1. The illusion of order, the paradox of professional neutrality.
There is this massive, glaring contrast between performance and reality. To be professional or to keep order, we're constantly told we have to be neutral. We lean forward in our chairs, rest our chin on our hands, and give this vacant stare of false engagement. We sit there listening to a totally failed plan being called an optimization. But in reality, we're silently putting up with sheer mediocrity. We are pretending the room isn't on fire just so everyone else can enjoy the warmth of the flames. It's a complete performance.
And here is the kicker. This performance is absolutely not free. In fact, research from semantic scholar points out that the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex is essential for the executive suppression of truthful responses. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but what it means is science literally proves that maintaining this polite facade demands immense cognitive energy. You are draining your brain's resources, literally hijacking your prefrontal cortex just to bite your tongue. So that exhaustion you feel is not just in your head. Well, I mean, it is in your head, but it's a measurable neurological reality.
This gives us a really fascinating reframe. A lot of what we call manners or etiquette actually falls under what's known as the law of mutual fear. It's this silent agreement where everybody just ignores everyone else's mistakes to avoid getting blamed themselves. Think about it. It's essentially a pact between two terrified people. I will overlook your obvious limitations if you promise not to call out mine. That's not genuine connection, folks. It is just a mutual hiding place.
Moving on to Section 2. The cost of silence, the compound interest of omission. So we talked about the cognitive brain drain, but what about the rest of your body? Well, the medical reality, as highlighted by clinical assaults, is pretty stark. Chronic emotional suppression kicks off a sympathetic nervous system cascade. Your cortisol levels spike, anxiety goes up, and your immune function is actively impaired. When you sit there and bite your tongue to keep the peace, your body biologically registers that silence as a literal physical threat. As you can see, the tax of emotional suppression isn't just some minor social inconvenience. Biologically, you are paying with elevated cortisol and an impaired immune system. And the psychological toll? It's just as devastating. Heightened anxiety, a gradual loss of your own identity, and a total amputation of truth. By keeping the peace, you are making a severe, ongoing compromise to your physical and mental health.
So how does this terrible tax actually play out? Well, Step 1, you hide your true feelings to keep the peace. Step 2, you pay that daily, invisible psychological tax we just talked about. And Step 3, you eventually suffer the amputation of your individual identity. Prioritizing the system, whether that's the company or a rigid family dynamic, over your own reality means you're quietly letting that system consume your time, your energy, and ultimately your true self.
You know, we so often mistake manners for kindness, but they really aren't the same thing. To maintain this rigid etiquette is basically agreeing that the mask is the only thing that matters. We avoid the pain of being exposed, and by doing that, we surrender our authenticity without a single word of protest.
Let's look at Section 3, Redefining Rudeness, a tool for integrity.
At a certain point, your biology's demand for reality is going to override your need for social safety, and that is when we drop the polite filters. Normally, we rely on the sandwich method, right? Softening the blow, starting with "I feel" or "in my opinion." But when your experience is being actively gaslit, you have to make the direct leap. You point out the lie. You absolutely refuse to budge on your integrity. You expose the truth without that protective armor of etiquette. And yes, people will absolutely call you rude for doing this. Game theory actually explains exactly why people react so strongly to that kind of directness, specifically through something called the stag hunt dilemma. Notice how social politeness is just a risk-dominant strategy. It's a low-value, safe equilibrium we use when we lack trust, so we just maintain mutual silence. Truth-telling, on the other hand, is a high-value equilibrium. It requires immense trust, but it leads to the actual, genuine integration of differences. Basically, politeness is just the low-level fallback when we're too scared to go for the high-value truth.
So the moment you bypass that low-value politeness and just speak the direct truth, the mask slips. And trust me, it cannot be put back on. The exact second you breach that manners contract, the whole room goes silent. Your coworkers or family members are probably in shock. But here's the secret. They are also in a state of quiet envy, because your refusal to pretend forces everyone else in that room to suddenly feel the heavy weight of their own masks.
Which leads us to Section 4, burning the right bridges. The clarification of destruction. There's this truly visceral metaphor in the source text. The system must patch up this glitch in the matrix. Once you speak out, a toxic or performative environment isn't going to look at your honesty as some beautiful revelation. The system is designed to protect itself. Because of that, it has to view you as a dangerous malfunction. You're a glitch that absolutely must be stopped and patched over so the show can go on.
And how exactly does the system patch that glitch? Through some very rapid defense mechanisms. They're going to label you as difficult. They'll call you unprofessional. They might even treat you as unstable. And they will suddenly create a whole lot of social distance. By throwing around these specific labels, people can convince themselves that you are the crazy one. And that's highly convenient for them because it protects them from the terrifying realization that you might actually be the only sane person in the entire room.
Society is always going to tell you that going against the collective grain is rude. But honestly, those so-called tactless words are often exactly what's needed to cut the umbilical cord of expectation. Breaking the illusion and saying what actually needs to be said is a necessary corrective measure. You aren't being mean. You are stepping out of a collective performance to save your own well-being and preserve your true identity.
So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. We are always told, over and over, don't burn bridges. But if a bridge requires your total erasure just to cross it, where is it really leading? Burning a bridge isn't destructive if it simply clarifies that the path was taking you somewhere you never wanted to be in the first place. Sometimes, letting the fire burn is the absolute only way to ensure you don't disappear entirely. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this changes how you look at the true cost of keeping the peace.